watcher in apartment 13. The city skyline stretched out before Sarah's window, a sea of twinkling lights and shadows. She had always loved the view from her high-rise apartment, but lately, a feeling of unease had settled in her chest. It began when she noticed her neighbor in apartment 13, a figure she only ever glimpsed in the dim glow of the hallway lights. Each night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah would catch a fleeting glimpse of the person behind the curtain in the apartment across from her balcony window. They seemed to be watching her, a silhouette framed by the window, unmoving and persistent. At first, she dismissed it as a trick of the light, her imagination playing tricks on her weary mind. But as the nights wore on, the feeling of being observed grew impossible to ignore. Halloween approached, casting a veil of orange and black over the city. Sarah's unease swelled with each passing day, culminating in a feeling of dread that settled deep within her bones. The watching figure in apartment 13 seemed more present than ever, their gaze a palpable weight on her soul. On the night of Halloween, as the moon hung low in the sky like a winking eye, Sarah found a small envelope under her door. It was plain and unassuming, but her trembling hands betrayed her apprehension. She unfolded the note inside, her breath caught in her throat. "You're being watched," it read, the words written in jagged, urgent strokes. "Danger is near. Stay vigilant." The message sent shivers down Sarah's spine. She glanced at her clock. It was almost midnight. The air felt charged with electricity, and the distant hum of the city seemed to echo in her ears. Panicked, she turned toward the window, her heart pounding. Apartment 13 was dark, its curtains drawn. The figure that had haunted her for weeks was nowhere to be seen. As the minutes ticked by, Sarah's anxiety refused to subside. She considered calling the police, but hesitated. What evidence did she have? A feeling? A note? With resolve hardening in her chest, Sarah decided to confront her mysterious neighbor. She threw on a coat and made her way down the corridor, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. Apartment 13 loomed before her, an enigma wrapped in shadows. She took a deep breath, raised her hand, and knocked. The seconds dragged on, stretching into an eternity. Just as she was about to turn away, the door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. A fragile figure stood before her, their face obscured by the shadows. "Who are you?" Sarah stammered, her voice barely more than a whisper. The figure shifted, and a croaky voice rasped, "You're in danger too." Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. "What do you mean?" The neighbor stepped forward, revealing a face etched with lines of worry and fear. "I've been watching too. He's been watching both of us." "Who?" Sarah's voice trembled. Before her neighbor could respond, a guttural growl echoed through the corridor. The lights flickered, causing an erratic shadow of a male figure on the walls. In the distance, she could see a tall figure, clad in a tattered black cloak, looming over them. Its mask, a twisted grin frozen in pale plastic. Without warning, he lunged forward, arms outstretched, like a specter seeking its prey. Sarah's survival instinct kicked in, pushing her neighbor behind her, shielding her as they were both struck to the floor. Sarah's breath quickened. "We need to go! Run!" With a surge of determination, she twisted away from his grasp, her breath hitching in her throat as she pushed the pursuer away. Together they fled down the stairwell, their footsteps echoing in the hollow silence. As they reached the ground floor, a cold wind swept through the lobby, extinguishing the feeble candlelight overhead, lit for Halloween. They burst through the building's entrance, the night air chilling their skin. The streets were eerily empty. the city's usual bustle replaced by an unsettling stillness as Halloween kept most entertained that evening. With the neighbor by her side, Sarah navigated the darkened streets. As they turned a corner, Sarah's heart froze. The same dark figure stood in front of them. Without a word, they turned and ran, the figure in pursuit. The city seemed to close in around them, the towering buildings becoming a maze of shadows. In their flight, they stumbled upon an old building that once was a church, its doors barely holding back the cold of the night. With a final burst of strength, they pushed through the entrance, finding sanctuary within the walls. They huddled in behind the dusty, piled chairs, their breaths ragged, their hearts pounding. Waiting out the night was their only choice. As dawn broke, casting a feeble light through the stained glass windows, the events of the night before seemed to have faded. The world outside had returned to its familiar rhythms, as if the night's horrors had never occurred. Sarah and her neighbor emerged cautiously, their eyes scanning the now peaceful streets. The threat seemed to have vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of unease and terror. To be continued.